Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to mourn the death and celebrate the life of the European teams at the World Championship. They brought two good teams and also H2K, and they did very well. They were great teams. They made it all the way to the semifinals, but in the end, the best teams won. May they live well in their next life in Season 6, and we hope to see them back again. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Rest in pepperonis.
Yes. I too was very sad when this happened, but somewhere during the last game, Monty just gave me a bit of his favorite drink here, and I feel that really helped drown away the pain. So just for you two gentlemen, I just want to make sure you get some Kool-Aid as well, because we can really celebrate this fantastic victory of, an all-Korean team, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and it really does fulfill the pattern of Korean teams at the World Championship. Season 2, the first season with Korea, 5 Koreans in the final, Korea loses. Season 3, 5 Koreans in the final, Korea wins. Season 4, 7 Koreans in the final, Korea wins. Season 5, 10 Koreans in the final, Korea wins.
They will win. We know that much is true. All right. Yeah, exactly.
Conservation of Koreans must be preserved. All right.
Well, we will get into that finals series in just a bit, but I do want to reflect on this one. Again, a 3-0, but it really was much closer than that, and that's what I want to dive into for these two teams. I mean, those first two games, Fnatic was in great positions.
It really could have gone either way, right? Those were extraordinarily close games. Fnatic had a strong early game lead in Game 1. They had a fantastic comeback attempt in Game 2, and they really did play well. Sometimes you get 3-0s that are close.
I just think the mental aspect, especially on such a big game, a best-of-5 here, the way Fnatic got ahead Game 1, and then the plays that cost them that lead and the manner in which KOO returned kind of set like a damper on the series. And we saw it in the interview as well. Mental aspect is very big in this series, and yeah, Fnatic, they got their foot in the door a little bit Game 2, but it slipped away, and then Game 3 was completely game over, and then fantastic performance overall from KOO.
Well, from Game 1, when they got that, 6, 7, 8K gold lead, the second they make that mistake and the game ends, they go back and review, and they're like, maybe we're a bit too aggressive, we need to focus on this. And then Game 2, their aggression dies down. Game 2 goes down and they lose. Game 3, their aggression is even lower. It's like after the first game, when they realized the aggression got the best of them eventually, they just started cutting it out every single game until it was almost non-existent.
Yeah, that first game to me was the picture of Fnatic that we expected to see. They came in, they went very aggressive very early on. They made all of the proactive moves in the game, built themselves a lead. Unfortunately, we're unable to close that. And it really does, as you mentioned, it comes down to then being able to separate the loss from the mentality that comes with it, because they needed to approach Game 2 with the same similar mindset. We will have a chance to come back, and we will return to the series in just a minute, but right now, Shox is standing by with Fnatic's veteran support.
Thank you very much indeed, standing by here with Yellow Star. Of course, have to start with thanking you for taking the time to talk to us. It can't be easy. I just want to start by having your general thoughts on the entire tournament and the road you traveled after now getting knocked out eventually.
Well, first of all, I have to admit that coming into the season, no one knew our members. And then it's pretty much the same. We have 4 rookies, or however we call them. We had to work and build so much. We had to work so much together. And then who would have believed it? They basically win the first split, and then we go undefeated the second split, and then we're here now in the semifinals at Worlds. It's pretty much the same story as Origin, So I'm really proud of them. And then there is a lot of pressure on us because since we went undefeated and we performed so well during the season, you might expect us to win the whole thing. I think we had the potential, but not enough experience. We had to control. We have a lot of stuff to work on, and maybe next year.
Well, that's the keyword for me there. The huge potential around your team. Can you maybe tell me how you, of course, as a veteran, has helped the rookies out so much, as you like to call them, how you will help and nurture that potential to make it to next year and maybe again have a shot at going all the way?
Yeah, mainly it's when, we just like to fight all the time, and sometimes we just have to control our emotions. It's not always easy because under pressure, when you're ahead, you kind of have bad habits and then you just keep doing them. But I believe that it takes time to fix them, and then we'll just come back stronger.
Definitely will. Finally, is there anything you want to say to all the fans watching at home and all the fans here?
I don't know, it just felt special because it's the first time we play in Europe. And anywhere we go, we have so much support. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who are watching at home or just people coming here to watch us play. It's just amazing. Like all the passion you guys have. Just thank you everyone for your support.
And thank you, Yellow Star, class act, what an interview, and what a fantastic run in the World Championships. Thank you so much, and see you next year.
Yeah.
All right, back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you, Shocks. Much deserved support from the audience here. I do want to return to your point during the eulogy, which is that Europe as a region brought two teams to the semifinals of Worlds. It was between Europe and Korea, and these are two very strong teams, Fnatic especially, that should be celebrated as they exit the tournament.
I mean, absolutely. I would have never expected two European teams to be in the semifinals, but with China really underperforming and Origin really getting their act together, they did a great job, and Fnatic definitely deserved to be in that semifinal too. Undefeated season, really a remarkable year for them.
Yeah, and it kind of helped us forget about the third European team, so that was all good. But yeah, fantastic performance overall by both these teams. And I mean, if you asked any of these teams coming to the start of the season, maybe like if we give you the offer here and sign here and you get to the semifinals of Worlds, most of those teams will say like, okay, definitely Origin. Fnatic maybe a little more hungry, but you can't underestimate how big like that performance really is.
I like Yellow Star's comment on experience because I think that's really undervalued right now. Like shot calling is normally built from experience, and a lot of the knowledge in the game isn't something you can pick up quickly. It's something you have to like, trial and error, go through it. So that being, I think, Europe's biggest weakness is experience, means it's only going to be growing for next year, so we're coming next year.
All right. I look forward to H2K next year.
Yeah, buddy.
I do think that's a big thing. It's a team of very talented but very young players. They will only become stronger through the next season of play. Now I want to turn our attention back to the winners of today's series. So KOO moving forward, and one person in particular. There was one person that broke away from the pack and claimed our player of the series honors. That man was KOO's top laner, Smeb. A 7.57 KDA and 31% of his team's damage.
I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. I think his performance tonight was thoroughly dominant. That Riven game that we're seeing right in the first game played so well in these team fights.
And there's a couple intangibles in League of Legends that you can't measure in kill participation, in gold necessarily, in KDA, and that's the pressure you put on the map, the way you play that lane, the fact that you can potentially tilt your opponent by your playstyle, dodging ganks here and there, and the pressure Smeb brought to this series and the mental aspect that brought into KOO versus Fnatic, I think cannot be underestimated either.
And they just didn't have answers for Smeb's champion pool. We saw even in that last game, they tried to blind pick the Riven. They knew they couldn't let him have it again. And yet he plays the reverse matchup that he had in game one and absolutely dominates on that Hecarim. So it was a very impressive individual performance that covered up some of KOO's weaknesses, such as some of the early jungling of Hojin.
Yeah, that's what I like most about Smeb, is because normally you look at these top laners who are doing well, and it's because they have a top lane focused team. This was like Hojin not even going top for the first 10 minutes of the game. The third game, yeah, he like changed his play South Lee Sin, and I like that. But this is Smeb getting an advantage and surviving getting first blooded and still staying relevant in the game with zero jungle pressure, which in my opinion shouldn't happen. You shouldn't be able to outplay those dives like he did. So I'm really happy that that was like possible.
Well, it's time now to pull up the bracket because we now have our 2015 League of Legends finalists. SK Telecom have looked dominant, sweeping through the group stage and the bracket stage straight into the finals with a perfect 12-0 record. Meanwhile, the KOO Tigers came out of the group stage with the #2 seed from Group A, but fought their way through, first taking down KT Rolster and then Fnatic to secure their spot in Berlin. Of course, at the start of the day, we wanted to know what you wanted to know over on Twitter. First up, at Ari Bambari asks, what does the victor of today's series have to do to beat SKT? They look invincible at the moment. Now we know it's KOO, so gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Yeah, how do you beat the Koreans, Monty?
I mean, I think that Smeb probably has a wider champion pool from Marin, so if he can abuse some of these matchups that Marin has. We've seen Marin's a great Fiora player, but there's still the Riven question. Marin's not a Riven player, so if Smeb maybe can get some of these good matchups rolling, that could be a way that they could win.
I mean, one of the ways KOO won this matchup was that top lane matchup, but he's going arguably up against the best player at Worlds in Marin, so even if Smeb doesn't lose that matchup, it stays even, then you got to start looking at the rest of the map. And I think Bengi does better than Hojin.
Yeah.
I think that's not a bold statement to make. And then in the mid lane, I think whoever they decide to place, you know.
A quick preview of our finalists there on stage right now around the Summoners Cup, which they will be fighting for next Saturday in Berlin. We've hit a lot on SMEB. You know, on the side of SKT, what are their largest strengths? We've talked about SMEB being a strength for KOO, but largest strength for SKT?
For SKT, man, I feel like they're just really, really well-rounded. And in this one in particular, like, said it a million times, like, they do have Faker against Koro in this one. Koro, I think, surprised a lot today and did really well. But this is going to be a Faker he has to take on for the next one, and a lot more cohesive team than Fnatic showed today.
Well, next up, we had Freaky97, who asked, do you think this year's SKT team is more dominant than last year's Samsung White?
I mean, on paper so far, being undefeated kind of makes you believe it, but the one crucial matchup there for White was when they played Blue, and they dropped the game there, I believe.
Nope.
No? They
3-0.
3-0, did you actually? But I think when the Koreans face off against each other, that's going to decide the matchup. So when SKT plays KOO, that's when we'll know.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too early to say that. It's also important to note that just in my history of casting Samsung White, they had a history of being very cocky when they got up 2-0 in a best of 5, and I think they were a bit more lackadaisical. SK Telecom has been all business so far, so that is, I think, a major difference. But we need to wait for the finals to find out.
I do like the play style of SKT. It's like this very, very split push oriented, crisp League of Legends where you got to play a lot on feel, dodging those ganks. The only really mistakes you see is people moving up to clear minion waves and then getting punished for it. But it's so hard to really appreciate that style unless you start toggling the vision a lot more, because the way SKT plays out these games and get these tremendous leads, they make it look easy, do it very often in full vision of their opponent, but they play around the Fog of War so well, and that's for me is just so impressive.
Now, probably Jat mentioned earlier that a lot of us had considered Fnatic to maybe be the better matchup against a SKT because they would take the fight to them. Well, KOO has shown throughout this tournament that they can play more than one side out. You mentioned in the group stages, they really went after things. In the bracket stages, they started to pull back, just played safe, wait for the other team to make a mistake. Do you think that this team has enough options in terms of game style and strategy that they could take games off of SKT or even take the win?
Well, I really am kind of impressed by KOO's pick ban. Like, I think that's kind of overlooked a lot of that time by just like how the games are played out. But being able to survive early game is definitely something I think KOO needs to fix. And if they can play like they did in groups, like that's going to be fine. I do think KOO's strength is the pick and ban, because when I watch SKT, there's not many like, oh no moments in the pick ban phase where I'm just like, oh my god, SKT got this champion, it's over. Sure, Ryze is sick, but it's not like an oh no champion.
We can't forget the Ryze. We still haven't finished that discussion, Monty.
But you see KOO get Lulu, and you're like, oh no, like they play Jinx. They have like an awesome Ashe player. Like this kind of sucks. They have this one champion. So I think that has it for KOO right now. And if they can get through the pick ban phase well, I think they can maybe take a game off or two.
And I think KOO just did a great job of drafting tonight. And they've been a team that has a history of good drafts. Nofei, their coach, is very, very good in that regard.
All right, well, both teams we've complimented for their drafting, so that will make for a very interesting pick ban leading into the gameplay itself. Now, we'd like to note that after 4 weeks of the over 2 million pick'em entries from around the world, only one is still 100% correct. Dext COD has called the entire tournament from group stages until today, and in case you're curious, they've picked SK Telecom to take home the top prize. Well, gentlemen, there can only be one, and he's calling for SK Telecom as is, so we'll have to throw that on to the end of the analyst desk predictions when we get there.
I just hope, I mean, some of these group results weren't really predictable, so whatever he had, I hope he shares, man. Come on. That was a crazy run.
He's making a good case for himself to take one of your spots next time around.
I mean, Krepa, you have a history, though, of when I pick a Korean team in the playoffs at Worlds, you pick against me. Just pick the Korean team with me next time, okay, buddy?
I can't. In the finals, I will pick a Korean team with you.
Right. Because one day, Monty, he's going to be right. Yeah. He's going to be right. That's going to be so sweet.
He is the Korean killer. He was the last European player to take down a Korean team in a best-of-5 in summer 2012.
And he'll do it again as an analyst one day. All right, well, we'll be back with our coverage of the Ultimate Showdown with Finals Week, which starts off with an all-new primetime league. Tune in for Mike Check, the Penta, and a complete download on the Worlds event. Then on Saturday, it is the main event. Korea's SK Telecom T1 versus the KOO Tigers in a best-of-5 for the Summoners Cup and the World Championship at Berlin's Mercedes-Benz Arena. Now be sure to stick around because in 15 minutes it's Worlds Night, where myself, Deficio, and Freak will chat about the day's highlights. Now for myself, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, good night, and we'll see you on the final stop on the road to the Summoners Cup.